Do you ever find yourself just reading a book and these littlest things, these tiniest things that maybe aren't a big deal, just really start driving you up the wall and makes you want to go, ah? That's coming right up here on Drew's Book Reviews. Alright, good day. Welcome to Drew's Book Reviews. Let's talk about my bookish pet peeves. Before we get into that, make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and I'd love to hear from you about what some of your bookish pet peeves are as well. To tell me about your bookish pet peeves, join me over on my Discord. That'll be linked below. You could also leave a comment in the comment section down below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, let's talk about it. What are some of my bookish pet peeves? Things that just drive me up the wall when it comes to books and writing and that kind of thing within the wonderful books that we all love and appreciate. So this is just going to be a list of 5 bookish pet peeves, not necessarily in the order of most to least favorite kind of thing, just 5 things that kind of bug me about books and some writing that I've come across in my many adventures throughout both my booktube and pre-booktube life. So starting off, the first thing that I wanted to mention was writing in accents. Now, I know a lot of people like writing in accents, and it could be fun and entertaining part of the story, having the characters speak in a different accent, whether that's with a lisp or another culture with their accent. But for me, honestly, it just kind of bugs me. And a good example of writing in an accent from one of my favorite series actually is the Knack Mac Feagle from the Discworld series. So this is an example of writing an accent here in this particular quote from We Free Men, particularly from Terry Pratchett's Discworld. Now, I totally get these are kind of based off of the Scottish culture, at least that's my impression of the Knack Mac Feagle, and they speak with a Scottish accent and Scottish way of talking and speaking with that kind of Braveheart type of thing. And I totally get that. And it's an awesome aspect to their character. In fact, it could even be fun, to be honest. But trying to read the accent as it's written, honestly, when I see this, sometimes I find myself, and maybe this is just me, I don't know, and maybe it is, but I find that I have a hard time reading sometimes the accents as they're written in some cases, and it makes it kind of takes me out of the story a little bit. I'd much rather know that the character who's speaking has a Scottish culture, and I would have already imagined in my mind the Scottish accent, but trying to read that is, well, it's just annoying. It's a pet peeve. Like, can you write it in a way that I can read it easily and simply as I go through the story, rather than having to stop and reread a few times to try and figure out what is he saying? Now, not every case is it going to be difficult necessarily. Sometimes they're slight or mild, but sometimes they're just insanely hard to read. So that is one of my pet peeves, is writing in an accent. So one of my other pet peeves when it comes to writing is when an author is writing a book and they're clearly writing from an extreme ideological perspective, and not just from one particular viewpoint or bias in the extreme, but really their entire book, their entire writing and story is just screaming this ideology at you and just kind of pounding it into your head. And I love political machinations. I love having opposing viewpoints. I love books that explore different ideologies, different principles, and different ideas, different politics, different religious ideology, different moral, ethical philosophies. I love that on my books. I really do. And it makes for some compelling storytelling. However, one author who, let's face it, I do love this author, at least I love their Sword of Truth series, but Terry Goodkind, he wrote some other books, Nest, particularly, and The Girl in the Moon. I bought these books in hardcover thinking I was going to love them because they're Terry Goodkind. But honestly, they're trash. They're the worst books by Terry Goodkind I've ever, and some of the worst books that I've honestly read. They're terrible. And they just scream this extreme right-wing gun control political ideology at you with every page in the book. And I'm just like, I can't stand it. I can't stand when it just comes at you that strongly. And I really don't like that. I hate that in the book. It's great to have a philosophical, political, and sociological discussions and ideas within the book. It's even okay if the author's leaning slightly to one side or the other in the writing, but to just pound it in there when you're written like a mantra and an entire essay and exposition on one political ideology over another, can't stand it. It just, they were not enjoyable reads. I wish I'd never spent my money on these books. In fact, I don't even know why I still have them. I'll have to unhaul them at some point. But they're just bad. One of the other pet peeves that I have, and you know what, again, another one of my favorite authors is guilty of this. Brandon Sanderson does this a lot, I find, and I don't know how accurate or true this is, but I feel like he does this a lot more than a lot of other authors I read, and that is with the dialogue of the characters, where it's a back and forth of he said, she said, he said, she said, or Wax said, or Wayne said, as is this example right here. So I call it the he said, she said dialogue style, where it's just the character's name said, the character's name said, the character's name said. This page alone, we got 4 examples of that happening in Sanderson's writing. And it just kind of bugs me, honestly. It just kind of drives me up the wall a little bit. And because there's so many different other creative ways to put into your storytelling what the characters are saying and what they're doing and when the characters are speaking. There's more creative ways to do that without just going, he said, she said. So that kind of drives me up the wall a little bit. It really does, and I just don't like it. I mean, I love Brandon Sanderson's writing. Absolutely, I do. If you watch the show, you know I'm a huge Sanderson fan, but just the way that's put into the dialogue just kind of drives me up the wall. Like, I don't need he said, she said all the time. You don't even need to tell me what character's speaking. Most of the time, you already know that from the context, and there's better ways to say what a character is doing or speaking without just going he said, she said type of thing. So the 4th bookish pet peeve that I have that I wanted to mention was when the author takes a particular character trait or aspect of a character and they become so hyper-focused on it that they just love reminding you of this particular character trait through almost every other page. It's like the whole book has become blinders on, hyper-focused on this type of character trait. And just as an example of this, and just to tell you how much it took me out of the story and how much it really detracted from the experience, to be honest, I don't even remember the name of the book or the character or what author it was. But I do remember the character, and what I remember about the character is that this character was gay. And somebody's going to take this out of context, I just know it. But what I mean by that is this author focused so intensely on this character's sexuality that every other page they were ranting on over and over again about how much this male character liked other men, how much he wanted to spend every night with these other male men, how much he enjoyed just sex with these men, and it was every other page. And this isn't me saying gay stuff is bad. It's not. And I know somebody's likely going to take this out of context, but it is not bad. That's not me saying it's bad. In fact, this series particular, the Shadow Campaigns, the Thousand Names, this has a character by the name of Winter Ironglass. Winter Ironglass is a gay character. She has gay relationships with other women in this book series. And it's done well. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed the relationship that Winter Ironglass had with other women in this book series about her experiences of being a lesbian in the army, of the culture of the time and setting of this book. And I actually enjoyed how that was done. I thought it was well done. So this is definitely not particularly me saying having these characters is bad, but it is me saying hyper-focusing on a particular character aspect and then just throwing it in your face time and time and time and time again, every other page, like, oh, we get it already. Can we move on? Do we have to have so much focus on this? So that is also one of my pet peeves. Don't do this if you're writing a book. Don't become so hyper-focused on a particular trait or aspect of a character that it detracts from everything else. And the final pet peeve that I want, or bookish pet peeve that I want to put out there, is people who don't edit their books. Honestly, I read one book by a self-published author who sent me a copy of their book, and I don't want to say who it is because it's just a terribly bad book. And honestly, my conversations with this author surrounding my experience reading their book did not go well at all. But I will say that if you're not going to hire an editor, if you're not going to do a proper editing on your book to make sure that it's a cohesive story that makes sense with good editing, without having, an insane amount of grammatical spelling errors, without really just making sure that your book is well written and you're doing the best job you can, don't publish something just to self-publish something. make sure that it's good, especially if you want people to review it. Now, this is not me saying that if you can't afford a publisher, don't self-publish. If you can't afford an editor, don't self-publish. That's not what I'm saying at all. You know, I get it. It's very, very expensive. But at the end of the day, like, if my pet peeve, if you can't be bothered to do a decent editing, even if you're doing it yourself, which it really felt like that this book was not edited at all, it was just thrown together and then published, then no, that's not a cool thing, because it doesn't matter how good of a story idea you have. If your book is atrociously written, and not just with characters and plot, but just atrociously written in general, where it's clear you did not edit that book and it's just bad, it's just a poor, terrible reading experience, and you cannot expect to get good or decent reviews on that. So those are my bookish pet peeves. Those are things that really can just kind of drive me up the wall with books and reading in general. So as you can see, some of my favorite authors are actually included in this list. You know, definitely I do tend to be pretty positive on some of these writers. It's not something that I am unable to criticize, essentially. But at the end of the day, those are my bookish pet peeves. These are things that drive me up the wall with some of the books that I have read. And, you know, let me know down below, what are some bookish pet peeves that you have? What are things that drive you up the wall with some of the books that you have read in terms of writing style or how things are done? I'd love to hear from you, or join me over on my Discord. We could have a chat over there as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you are having a wonderful day and a fantastic reading year so far. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, keep on reading. Bye!